Alex Carter's footsteps echoed softly on the pavement as he approached Ethan Miller's apartment building. It was late, past the hour when most people retreated to their quiet lives, and the streets were unusually empty. A strange thrill ran through him, equal parts anticipation and anxiety. He wasn't sure why he had decided to come tonight, on a whim, but something about Ethan had been occupying his thoughts relentlessly over the past few weeks. The way Ethan's laugh lingered in his memory, the curve of his smile when he teased Alex over trivial things, small moments that, on their own, seemed insignificant, but collectively left an impression Alex couldn't shake. That he paused at the door, his hand hovering over the buzzer. Was this reckless? Maybe. But the urge to see Ethan, to feel the air around him, had overridden every caution. With a deep breath, he pressed the button, the soft buzz of the intercom filling the tense silence. Moments later, the door clicked open, and he stepped inside, the faint scent of polished wood and lingering cologne greeting him. "Alex?" Ethan's voice carried through the hall, warm but teasing, carrying a familiarity that made Alex's stomach twist. Ethan appeared at the end of the hallway, casually dressed in a loose t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair damp, the glint of water droplets on his skin catching the light. There was something disarming about him in these quiet, unguarded moments, something that made Alex's heart race in a way it hadn't before. "Hey," Alex said, trying to sound casual, though his voice wavered slightly. He could feel the pulse of his nerves through the thin fabric of his jacket, the tight coil of tension in his shoulders. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, one eyebrow raised. "Didn't expect to see you tonight. Everything okay?" His tone was light, but there was a curiosity there, a subtle spark that suggested he enjoyed the unexpected. "Yeah, just felt like dropping by," Alex replied, shrugging, though it did little to hide the excitement fluttering beneath the surface. He had rehearsed this moment countless times in his head, each scenario more fantastical than the last. But now that he was here, standing in Ethan's apartment, the reality was far more potent than any daydream. Ethan moved aside, gesturing Alex in. "Come on in." "I was just, he hesitated, and Alex caught a glimpse of the bathroom door slightly ajar, steam curling out from the edges. "Taking a shower," Ethan finished, with a self-conscious chuckle that made Alex's chest tighten. Alex's mind spun with a mix of curiosity and something more dangerous, something forbidden he wasn't ready to name. He wanted to leave, to retreat, to remind himself this was merely a friendly visit, but the pull toward Ethan, toward the private, intimate aura surrounding him, was magnetic. "I won't keep you long," Alex said, attempting to mask the lurch of desire in his voice. Ethan's smirk was playful, knowing, and it unsettled Alex in ways he hadn't anticipated. "You never do," Ethan said, stepping back to let Alex enter fully. The air inside the apartment was warm, filled with the faint scent of soap and Ethan's cologne. It was comforting and suffocating all at once. Alex found himself wandering into the living room, though his attention was anchored on the sound of running water and Ethan's presence just beyond the bathroom door. He ran a hand over the edge of the couch absent-mindedly, focusing on the sensation, grounding himself as he tried to steady the rapid rhythm of his heart. He wondered if Ethan had noticed the way he hesitated, if he understood the tension coiling between them even before any words were spoken. Minutes passed, but they stretched like hours. Ethan's laughter echoed faintly from behind the frosted glass of the bathroom door as he called out, "You always this quiet when you're nervous?" Alex flushed, caught off guard. "I'm just taking it in," he admitted, though the word sounded weaker than he intended. The truth was, he didn't just want to take it in, he wanted more. He wanted to feel closer, to understand what it would be like to cross that invisible line he had skirted around for weeks. He considered leaving, telling himself it was safer, wiser, that Ethan was his friend and nothing more should be allowed. But another part of him, the part that was reckless and aching, wanted to step closer, to acknowledge that pull between them that neither had named aloud. He could hear the faint splash of water, the movement on the other side of the door, and it made his imagination race with possibilities. Ethan emerged from the bathroom, dripping slightly, hair damp and clinging to his forehead. He smiled at Alex, a soft, intimate expression that made Alex's resolve crumble. "You came all this way, for me?" Ethan asked, voice lower now, teasing, but with an undertone that made Alex's chest tighten in anticipation. I just wanted to see you," Alex stammered, heat rising to his cheeks. Every word felt inadequate, but there was no turning back. Ethan's eyes held his gaze with a mix of curiosity and challenge, daring him to admit what he wanted but couldn't quite say aloud. Ethan's hand brushed against the doorframe as he leaned closer, just enough to close the distance without fully stepping into Alex's space. The air seemed charged, electric with unspoken intention. Alex's thoughts scattered, one moment telling him to retreat, the next whispering that this could be the moment that changed everything, and then, just as Alex opened his mouth to respond, Ethan's hand lightly touched his arm, guiding him toward the bathroom. The warmth of contact, the subtle pressure, sent a jolt through Alex's entire body. It was a gentle pull, yet impossible to resist. His heart thudded painfully in his chest, and a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursed through him. Alex hesitated for a fraction of a second, the rational part of him screaming to stop. But the allure, the temptation that Ethan embodied in that intimate, quiet apartment, was stronger than anything he had anticipated. And before he could fully consider the consequences, he found himself moving with Ethan, drawn into the private, steamy sanctuary of the bathroom, where everything was about to change. The moment hung between them, charged and silent, leaving Alex suspended on the edge of desire and uncertainty, knowing that once the next step was taken, there would be no turning back. The bathroom was smaller than Alex had imagined, the air heavy with steam that curled in soft, hazy ribbons around the dim light above. Water dripped rhythmically from the faucet, a quiet, almost hypnotic sound that filled the space between them. Ethan's presence was overwhelming, close, tangible, and yet entirely unpredictable. He looked at Alex with a gaze that was both teasing and intense, a spark that made Alex's stomach twist with nervous anticipation. "Relax," Ethan said softly, though the word carried a double meaning. He stepped closer, and Alex could feel the warmth radiating off him, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with the faint, clean fragrance of soap. Alex's pulse raced, a heady combination of fear and curiosity running through his veins. He had crossed a line, one he had been inching toward for weeks, but now that he was here, the weight of it was almost intoxicating. I don't know if this is," Alex started, but his words faltered, swallowed by the charged atmosphere. Ethan's smile widened, amused by the hesitation that betrayed Alex's desire even more than words could. "You don't have to know anything," Ethan murmured, brushing a stray strand of wet hair from his forehead. "Just be here with me." His hand hovered for a brief second near Alex's arm, almost imperceptible, before resting lightly on his shoulder. The contact was electric, a jolt that made Alex shiver despite the heat in the room. Alex's mind raced. He knew this was dangerous, that boundaries were being stretched, or broken, but the pull was irresistible. Ethan had a way of making the impossible feel natural, making hesitation feel unnecessary. He found himself leaning in slightly, drawn by the same unspoken desire that had brought him to Ethan's apartment in the first place. "You always have this effect on me," Alex admitted, voice low, trembling with an honesty he rarely allowed himself to express. Ethan's eyes softened, a subtle vulnerability breaking through the confident, teasing exterior that Alex had always admired. "I could say the same," Ethan replied, stepping just close enough that their shoulders brushed. "But it's risky, isn't it?" His tone was light, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. Risk hung in the air, thick and undeniable, and Alex felt it like a physical weight pressing against his chest. The water ran uninterrupted in the background, and for a moment, the world outside the bathroom seemed to vanish. The only reality was Ethan, the warmth of his skin, the soft cadence of his voice, the subtle scent that was uniquely him. Alex's thoughts flickered between caution and longing, the logical part of his mind warning him to stop, to retreat, while another part urged him forward, daring him to surrender to the moment. I don't want to ruin anything," Alex whispered, almost to himself. Ethan's response was a quiet chuckle, but there was no mockery in it. Instead, it carried reassurance, a magnetic pull that drew Alex closer without words. "Sometimes the things we don't plan, the things we can't control, they change everything," he said. His hand lingered just a breath away from Alex's, a teasing proximity that left Alex's thoughts in a dizzying spiral. time seemed to stretch, each second elongated by the tension between them. Alex noticed the small details, the way Ethan's eyes flicked nervously to the mirror, the faint glint of water on his eyelashes, the subtle rise and fall of his chest as he took a slow breath. Every observation sent a wave of anticipation crashing through Alex, reminding him that this moment was entirely real, entirely theirs, and entirely forbidden. "I shouldn't," Alex began again, the words faltering. But before he could finish, Ethan moved slightly, guiding him with a gentle touch toward the shower area. The motion was careful, deliberate, as though testing the limits of Alex's comfort. Alex's heart raced, a mix of fear, curiosity, and a longing he had struggled to suppress for weeks. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Alex's back, the contact fleeting but enough to ignite a deep awareness of proximity. "If you want to step back, you can," Ethan said softly, though the half-smile tugging at the corners of his lips suggested he hoped Alex wouldn't. Alex froze, torn between retreat and surrender. He had imagined scenarios like this countless times, each one more daring than the last, yet the reality was far more intense than his imagination had allowed. He felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the physical space. The exposure came from the closeness, the intimacy of attention, the silent conversation their eyes and gestures carried. I trust you," Alex said finally, the words leaving his mouth before he could second-guess them. They sounded vulnerable, fragile, but honest. The confession seemed to hang in the air, wrapping them both in a quiet, undeniable tension. Ethan's expression softened, and for a brief moment, the teasing confidence faded, replaced by a gentleness that caught Alex off guard. "Then let's just see where this goes," he murmured. His hand lingered a fraction longer on Alex's shoulder, the warmth grounding Alex even as every nerve in his body felt electric with anticipation. The sound of running water continued, rhythmic and insistent, a backdrop to the charged silence between them. Alex's thoughts were scattered, a chaotic swirl of logic, desire, and fear. He knew this was the precipice of something irreversible, yet part of him wanted to step over, wanted to explore the intensity that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long. And then, in a moment that seemed suspended between seconds and eternity, Ethan leaned slightly closer, their proximity shrinking the space that had existed just moments ago. Alex's chest tightened, a rush of adrenaline and something far more potent coursing through him. The anticipation was unbearable, yet delicious, a silent promise that everything was about to change. Alex felt a shiver run down his spine as Ethan's hand gently guided him toward the steam-filled space, closer than he had imagined possible. He realized, with a thrill that was almost frightening, that this was a moment of choice. One step further, and the dynamic between them would shift irrevocably. As the heat of the room pressed in on him, Alex closed his eyes for a brief second, taking a steadying breath. When he opened them, Ethan was still there, waiting, patient yet expectant. And in that quiet, charged pause, Alex understood that the next moment would define everything: desire, risk, and consequence converging in a single heartbeat. The steam hung thickly in the bathroom, curling in lazy spirals around the dim light, and Alex felt a flutter in his chest that he couldn't quite name. He was acutely aware of Ethan's presence, close, warm, unrelenting, and the sound of water from the shower became a steady rhythm that mirrored the racing of his own pulse. He had crossed a boundary, but the thrill wasn't entirely physical. It was in the stolen intimacy, the unspoken tension that crackled between them. Ethan's eyes held him captive, a mix of curiosity and challenge that made Alex both nervous and excited. There was an ease to Ethan's confidence, a subtle dominance in the way he moved that made the moment feel charged, even sacred. "You're quieter than usual," Ethan said softly, the water dripping off his hair punctuating each word. "I was expecting more." Hesitation. Alex swallowed, his throat dry despite the heat of the room. I'm just trying to process this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He hadn't imagined the intensity of being this close to Ethan, the closeness that left him vulnerable in ways he hadn't anticipated. Every brush of skin, every subtle movement was amplified, echoing in his mind long after the contact ended. Ethan stepped closer, his wet hair sticking to his forehead, droplets tracing lines down his neck. He didn't touch Alex yet, only closed the gap between them, giving a sense of intimacy that was almost unbearable. Processing is overrated, Ethan murmured, leaning slightly toward him, eyes flicking to Alex's face, studying reactions in a way that made Alex's chest tighten. Sometimes you just feel. Alex's heart pounded. He wanted to step back, to remind himself this was risky, forbidden, yet another part of him, a bolder, curious part, urged him forward. Ethan had always had a way of drawing him in, teasing the edges of what was safe, and now that he was here, Alex realized just how much he had been under Ethan's quiet spell. I don't know if I should, Alex began, but his words faltered. There was no clarity, only a magnetic pull he couldn't resist. Ethan smiled faintly, understanding without explanation. Then don't, he said, a whisper that seemed to wrap around Alex's mind like a velvet rope. Just be here. Let this happen, or at least let it be what it is, for now. Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't fear exactly, but a thrill, a recognition of the line he had just stepped over and the uncertainty of what came next. He was painfully aware of Ethan's proximity, the subtle heat radiating off him, and the quiet intensity in his gaze. This wasn't just physical closeness, it was emotional, charged with something neither of them had named but both understood. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the drip of water and their synchronized breathing. Alex's thoughts swirled, the exhilaration of forbidden intimacy, the danger of crossing boundaries, the magnetic pull of someone he had always felt drawn to. His body reacted instinctively to Ethan's nearness, the subtle brushing of an arm or shoulder sending sparks through his nerves. He realized, in that suspended moment, that desire and hesitation could coexist, and that uncertainty was often the most intoxicating element of all. Ethan's hand finally brushed against Alex's arm, not forceful, but deliberate, testing a boundary without overstepping. The contact made Alex jump slightly, his pulse quickening, yet he didn't pull away. There was a strange comfort in Ethan's touch, a reassurance that, while the moment was charged and reckless, it was also consensual, mutual, a shared curiosity that was entirely theirs. I shouldn't feel like this, Alex murmured, more to himself than to Ethan. It feels wrong. Ethan's eyes softened, and for a moment, the playful, teasing mask fell away. Right and wrong are complicated, he said quietly. Sometimes it's not about them, it's about what you feel. What you actually feel when no one else is watching. He reached out, lightly brushing Alex's hair from his forehead, a gesture so intimate that Alex felt a warmth rise to his cheeks. Alex's mind swirled. He wanted to retreat, to remind himself that Ethan wasn't just a friend, that lines existed for a reason. But at the same time, he felt a connection, a pull, a silent invitation he couldn't ignore. The bathroom, small and steamy, had become a world apart from the rest of life, a place where time and rule seemed suspended. You're different here, Alex finally said, voice shaky but honest. Like. I don't know you this way. And maybe I don't want to. Ethan smiled, a faint, knowing curl of his lips. Maybe you do, he said softly. There was no pressure, only presence, a calm magnetism that made Alex's thoughts flutter between rationality and surrender. Every look, every gesture, was a conversation in itself, a silent understanding that this moment was theirs alone. The water from the shower continued to fall, the rhythm almost meditative, yet it heightened the tension, marking the passage of every charged second. Alex noticed the small details, Ethan's damp hair clinging to his forehead, the curve of his jaw in the dim light, the way his eyes lingered on Alex's face as if reading every fleeting emotion. Each detail pulled Alex deeper into the moment, further from caution, closer to something he both feared and desired. I don't know how to stop thinking about you, Alex admitted, the confession escaping before he could reconsider. His voice was low, vulnerable, but not apologetic. It was the truth, raw and unvarnished, a statement that carried weight far beyond the bathroom walls. Ethan's expression softened, and he leaned just slightly closer, close enough that Alex felt the warmth radiating from him more intensely. Then maybe you shouldn't, Ethan said, voice low, almost a murmur. Maybe some things are meant to be felt before they can be named. Some things are just experienced. Alex's chest tightened, a wave of emotion he hadn't anticipated. Desire, fear, curiosity, guilt, and longing collided, leaving him suspended in the moment, caught between retreat and surrender. He understood that once he took the next step, there would be no turning back, not in this night, not in this space, not in the quiet intimacy that had suddenly become their world. And as Ethan's gaze held him, unwavering, patient, and yet full of quiet expectation, Alex realized that the choice was already made in his heart. Something fundamental had shifted, something neither of them could deny, something that would echo far beyond the steamy confines of the bathroom.